During my university days, I joined the mountaineering club, so on weekends and holidays, I'd often go hiking with my club friends. Back then, there was a trend called mountain girls, a fashionable style for women climbing mountains. Honestly, I never really understood why style mattered on a climb, or the strange idea of showing off body curves while hiking. To me, mountain climbing was all about skill and professionalism, so I didn't pay much attention to that trend. But during that time, we planned a trip to climb a mountain that many ascetic monks often trekked. It was said to be a very spiritual mountain, full of legends. The day before our climb, one of the seniors warned everyone to dress simply, no flashy clothes. It felt like such an odd request that I asked why. The senior explained a local legend. On that mountain lived a goddess who was extremely jealous. If you dressed too nicely and entered the mountain, she might get jealous. That could lead to sudden bad weather, strange phenomena, or downright misfortune. Honestly, I was half skeptical when I heard this story. Still, on the climb day, we all obediently wore plain, simple clothes. Along the way, we encountered a climbing club from another university. Every single one of them was dressed up fashionably, looking sharp and trendy. Since we were taking different routes, we traveled together for a short stretch, then parted ways to reach our own goals. That day, we reached the mountain hut on the trail without issue and spent the night there. The next morning, we climbed to our target summit and then returned down the mountain. After reaching the base in the afternoon, we saw the news. The group of university students we met on the trail had suffered a mountain accident. The next day, they were all rescued by the search team. Truly a lucky outcome amid misfortune. Yet, they were still terrified, deeply shaken mentally. No one knew exactly what had happened to them. But thinking back on the senior story about the mountain goddess jealousy, I felt a chill. Maybe it was just coincidence, but maybe, just maybe, they had angered that fiercely jealous goddess and paid the price. This was something that really happened during my high school days. Back then, my 3 close friends and I went exploring a nearby mountain. Their names were Kanyu, Tono, and Zheng Xiao. Kanyu was known as a bit of a troublemaker at school. I was like him. I didn't enjoy bullying others, but we'd been good friends since childhood. Tono was kind of a fool, but the most popular among the 4 of us. Zheng Xiao's family owned a prestigious shrine, though he could be careless. That afternoon, the 4 of us ventured into the mountain, exploring until it was nearly time to head back. That's when something happened. Tono suddenly called me over. "Come here. Look at that," thinking he was up to another dumb prank. I walked toward him. He pointed deep into the forest. When I looked, I froze in fear. There, standing in the thick woods, was a strange tent, and a woman's pale face peeked out from one corner of it, partially visible, facing our direction. Tono called Kanyu and Zheng Xiao over, and we all debated quietly. What was that? A tent out in a place like this? Strange, but her face washed it way to white. Could it be some kind of yokai? Just as we discussed, the woman's eyes suddenly snapped wide open. Her eyes were completely blood red, no pupils, just bright crimson. She pushed her whole head out of the tent and let out a horrible moan, an unsettling, ghastly sound. I started to feel afraid. My heart was pounding so fast, it felt like the air around me had thickened, as if time itself had slowed. Instinctively, I sensed that thing, whatever it was dangerous. My legs began trembling uncontrollably. We all knew we'd seen something impossible, something unexplainable, but rather than look away, we were drawn in, our eyes fixed, unable to break free. Just as we were all rooted to the spot, it was Zheng Xiao, usually the calmest one, who suddenly shouted at us, "Don't look anymore. Run now." His shout snapped me back like a line being pulled tight. It was as if he'd been sucked into some otherworldly space and was suddenly yanked back to reality. Without hesitation, the 4 of us took off, racing down the mountain. I was so panicked that I barely thought, just followed Zheng Xiao blindly, my whole mind set on escape. After a while, the two of us finally slowed down and realized the other two friends were nowhere to be seen. We waited at the foot of the mountain, hoping Kan Yu and Da Yu would show up. But no matter how long we waited, they didn't come. The mountain's path only led back to this one junction, so we thought maybe they'd gotten ahead of us. Maybe they'd already gone home. With that hope, Zheng Xiao and I started walking toward home. As we went, we talked about what had just happened. That woman in the tent was disgusting, Zheng Xiao said with a serious expression. Don't tell anyone about her. Absolutely nobody. We have to keep this a secret between us. He looked so serious, almost frightening. Eventually, we reached Zheng Xiao's family shrine. After greeting his father, we were about to leave when Zheng Xiao's father suddenly looked us over closely. Then he got nervous and asked, "Did you go mountain climbing? Did you see something?" Zheng Xiao answered honestly, "We saw the tent. Inside, a pale-faced woman. Her eyes were completely red." Zheng Xiao's father's eyes went wide as he scolded us. "Do you even know what you've done?" Both Zheng Xiao and I were too scared to move. He said, "Come here. They'll help you. You must pray to the gods seriously. Ask for their protection, so you can live and not end up like Kan Yu and Da Yi." At the time, I didn't fully understand. How did he already know? Kan Yu and Da Yi had been there too. What was that pale-faced woman? My mind kept spinning with these questions. After that, the two of us followed the priest's instructions and underwent a ritual to drive out evil. Since then, I never saw Kan Yu or Da Yi again. I asked Zheng Xiao, and even Kang Yus and Da Yi's mothers, what had happened to them. They all looked confused and gave vague answers, as if they didn't want to talk about it. The matter was left hanging, unresolved. Later, after I graduated high school, Zheng Xiao's father came to visit my home one day. I don't know what he said to my parents, but the next day I was forced to leave my hometown. I never returned. As time passed, the memory faded slowly, buried beneath everyday life. Until recently, when my mother called me with terrible news, Xiao had died. That's when the whole ordeal came rushing back. I wondered if his death was connected to that pale-faced woman. I don't know what will happen next. All I feel is fear and helplessness. When I was little, my parents and I once had an encounter while climbing a mountain. It always felt like something extraordinary, something that shouldn't have happened. Here's how it went. I was still in elementary school summer vacation. One of my assignments was to visit a mountain and write about the experience. So the three of us, my parents and I, went to that mountain for a trip. The scenery along the way was beautiful, and we reached the summit safely. After a picnic at the top, we prepared to return to the city. We headed down the same path we'd climbed. During that entire time, I noticed something strange. We hadn't met a single person on the mountain. I thought, this place must be unpopular and lonely. Walking alongside my father, we chatted as we descended. Then, finally, we came across a group of people. They looked just like USA family of three. But what surprised me was how fast they were climbing. It was like they were walking on flat ground, not struggling up the steep path. They walked in a single line, heads down, silent. Their faces were pale, lifeless. They didn't seem aware of their surroundings at all, just focused on moving forward. My father and I walked side by side, with my mother a few steps behind. After passing that family, my father muttered, "Such a strange family." Near the foot of the mountain, we passed an elderly man with a friendly smile. We nodded politely to him, and then went to rest at a cafe by the mountain's base. Inside the cafe, my father and I talked about the family we had just met, but my mother didn't join the conversation at all. I asked her about the strange group. "But don't you think something about it was strange?" My mother asked me, her face full of confusion. What are you talking about? From start to finish, there was no one else there. She said, I only saw the two of you coming down the mountain. I don't know what you were looking at, something weird, I guess. My father and I listened, stunned. It didn't seem possible. But later, when I thought it over carefully, that family we saw climbing up felt utterly out of place. It was like they were moving on an escalator or something unnatural. Too eerie to explain. Then there was the old man we met afterward. His clothes and demeanor weren't like anyone ordinary in this time. Both my father and I still talk about these things sometimes, trying to figure it out. To this day, neither of us knows for sure what we saw that day. This story is something that happened when I went back to my hometown once. I went with my childhood friend, who is really into mountain climbing. His uncle, also an experienced climber, was joining us too. The whole point of the trip was to climb a mountain with the uncle. Since I like photography, I went along with them. On the train heading to the trailhead, my friend told me some important climbing tips. He was especially serious about one warning when passing other climbers on the trail. Be very careful about how you greet them. He said, just follow what I do. If I nod, you nod. But if I don't look at them, don't look back. Don't say anything. I didn't really understand what he meant at the time. But once we met his uncle and got ready, we started the climb. The order was my friend led in front, I was second, and the uncle was last. As we climbed, we passed several groups of climbers. My friend always greeted them as we passed, and I tried to copy him, nodding or saying hello. After passing a few groups, we'd been climbing for I don't know how long when suddenly, I noticed a climber ahead whose presence was completely different. I don't know how to describe it, except that he looked very dark and carried an eerie, unsettling aura. My instinct screamed danger. I felt my heart pounding faster. My friend up front also noticed him. He glanced back at me, giving a warning look, then lowered his head and kept walking silently. I matched his pace, also keeping my head down. As we drew close to that man, my friend didn't greet him. Neither did I just quietly lowered my head. When we passed him, I knew I shouldn't look, but my curiosity got the better of me, and I stole a glance. I truly regretted it, because when I looked, he was staring right back at me. His face was ashen grey, lifeless. It looked rotten, with patches of skull showing through the peeling flesh. One of his eyeballs hung loose, dangling out of the socket. His nose was crawling with maggots, and the moment our eyes met, he smiled at me. Goosebumps broke out all over my skin. I immediately turned my eyes to the ground, half meanness closing them, and hurried to catch up with my friend. Behind me, I heard the uncle talking to that terrifying climber. Once we caught up, my friend saw me sweating with a pale face and stopped to rest. When we looked back, only the uncle remained. The creepy man had vanished. The uncle walked over slowly, smiling. I knew we'd meet him, he said. But don't worry. Nothing to fear now. I asked, what did you say to that thing just now? He pulled a string of prayer beads from his pocket. I gave this to him. I told him to take it and find peace. My friend later told me the uncle has a strong sensitivity. He often sees strange things during climbs. He said the uncle often meets spirits of climbers who died on the mountain, wandering and lost. Feeling sorry for them, the uncle asks a monk every year to bless some prayer beads to help those spirits find rest. My friend laughed and said, every time we climb with my uncle, we end up meeting something like that. After hearing all that, I thought people who love climbing must have really strong minds. This next story I heard from the owner of a hot spring inn nearby. It happened in the autumn on Mount Shirokami. One night, the owner received news that a local forager had fallen and gone missing on the mountain. When he arrived at the scene, police and rescue teams were already there. setting up spotlights to begin a search. The spot was between Mount Tembu and Akoshiboshi Bridge, a steep cliff dropping off beneath a guardrail. Near the scene stood a man in his 50s, crying quietly. He begged them to hurry and save his wife. The man said he and his wife had come to forage for wild vegetables, but when he looked away from her for just a moment, he heard her scream and she vanished. At that time, the weather in the Shirakomi Mountains was still very cold. The rescue workers and police warmed themselves by a bonfire, waiting for the searchlight to be set up. Before long, the searchlight was ready. When they switched it on, a powerful beam shot down into the valley floor. The rescue team slowly moved the searchlight's circle of illumination, beginning their search. After a while, someone called out. The searchlight stopped moving. When the owner saw what lay below, his immediate thought was, there's no way she's still alive. About 100 meters down from the guardrail, a woman lay in the valley on a protruding rock. The rescue team shouted down through a megaphone, but the woman gave no response. Everyone present instinctively believed she was already dead, because the location was on a steep cliff face. It was dangerous. If they weren't careful, there could be a secondary accident, so everyone proceeded with extreme caution. The man and the rescue team began discussing how to descend to the valley floor. Suddenly, the man became agitated. He spoke frantically to the rescue personnel. I can hear her calling out, "My wife is still alive." The rescue workers desperately tried to calm him down, but the man refused to listen. An argument broke out between them. The man shouted anxiously, "Hurry! Hurry! Can't you hear her calling my name?" After saying this, he suddenly broke into a run, right in front of everyone. Without a second thought, he vaulted over the guardrail and dropped down. Screams erupted at the scene. The rescue workers froze in shock. In the chaos, everyone looked down the cliff face and saw that the man had landed within the searchlight's beam. Eerily, he lay right beside his wife, looking as though he were saying to her, "I've come to save you." The owner was so frightened he didn't know what to do. He thought to himself, what on earth is happening here? At that moment, a car arrived at the roadside and pulled up to the scene. A man in his 30s rushed out, saying, "I heard my family fell down there." It was the victim's son. Everyone was speechless. Then someone told him, "We're about to go down and bring the bodies up. Please don't look down." The victim's son said, "What are you talking about? What bodies? Aren't my parents down in the valley calling out?" Everyone at the scene was dumbstruck, unable to respond to his reaction. Then the victim's son suddenly seemed to go mad, trying to run toward the guardrail. A police officer immediately grabbed him and shouted, "Stop right now. If you don't stop, we'll take you away." The moment that officer warned him, all the police present rushed at the son together and pinned him down. He roared, "What are you doing? Can't you hear them? My parents are calling me." He howled in near-minus madness, raging wildly. But aside from him, no one at the scene heard any calling, because the scene had descended into complete chaos. He was eventually forced by police into the back seat of a patrol car. But even after he was shut inside the police car, he kept saying, "My parents are calling me. They're shouting for me." And whenever he got the chance, he'd rush out of the car, leaving everyone at the scene at a loss. The bizarre situation at the scene didn't resemble a mountain rescue operation at all. Several hours later, the couple's bodies were pulled up from the valley floor.